Okay, this is going to be a very unique show. So we have Gary Wilson, and we're going to talk about your brain on porn. So fasten your seatbelts because we're going to learn together. Now, Gary, this is the time that we normally have our music, but because we're pre-recording, we're going to go straight in. So get ready to start. Here we go. We got the start mark. Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who've been tuning in for the last 7 years or even just yesterday, welcome back. But if this is your first time of stumbling on the show, then we've been waiting for you. It's no accident. Just know that this is a safe place that you can go to when you need a friend. And it is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal. And it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. So here we go. Today's show is going to be a little difficult. This is a different kind of show, but I hope that you embrace it. I hope that you do call in if you want a copy of this book, because this is a topic that we don't really address. And it's about the internet and how an internet allows us to have the world at our fingertips. And we rely on the internet for everything. But just like everything wonderful, there is a shadow side. And the shadow side is a huge problem that I believe many of us don't think of it as a problem. So, or don't even want to admit there is a problem or talk about the problem as if this problem will go away. So let's just imagine a 10-year-old going onto the internet and being exposed to internet pornography. But this 10-year-old now has been exposed by internet pornography, and now they are an adult. They are addicted to pornography. And I'm not saying men. I'm saying this is men, women, anyone that is addicted to this problem. Now, this exposure not only affects children, it also affects everybody in the family. And so it's fortunate for us, we have Gary Wilson, who is an expert in this subject about addiction to internet pornography. And he's going to help us learn how to reverse this anxiety, depression, and possibly erectile dysfunction that can come from this addiction. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Gary Wilson is here to do just that. Welcome, Gary, to the Lillian McDermott radio show.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I want to warn my listeners on the radio show that this topic might not be, I don't know if you're okay with your children listening to it, but I wanted to warn you. So share a little bit about your background, Gary, and what led you to discovering this industry or field or this problem.
Yeah, I'm a retired anatomy and physiology instructor, and I got into this by definitely accident. I'm non-religious, I'm very liberal, and it happened about 10, 12 years ago. Some men started showing up on my wife's website, a forum that had nothing to do with internet pornography. It was about relationships, and they started to post there today, and we still don't know why. And they were saying, you know, we think we have pornography problems, and we think that maybe our erectile dysfunction or lack of libido are related to it. She's saying, why are you here? Well, anyhow, we think that Google must have gathered together their comments, and more men started showing up until her forum, which was about relationships, became sort of a locker room of men discussing basically their sexual problems induced by internet pornography. And what was interesting is as these men started to give up pornography, they also started to see other benefits like their concentration improved, they had more motivation, their social anxiety went away, they had greater desire to socialize, they experienced more emotions. Well, as time went on, we decided that we needed to blog about this, and we did, and we wrote a few articles and more people showed up. And eventually my wife asked me to make a website around 2011, and I did, about the problems and about the benefits that the men were experiencing. And I did, and that became hugely popular. And then I was asked to do a TEDx talk,
Yeah.
and that became hugely popular. It's about 11 million views. And so
Yes.
this is sort of snowballed into something I had no idea would occur. And so obviously there's a big problem out there. So that's how I started with this all.
Amazing. Amazing that, you know, because as children, there's always this little, you know, looking at like the encyclopedia to see naked people, or maybe National Geographic, or, you know, you make a conscientious decision or a conscious decision to get a Playboy or a Playgirl or whatever. How is this different from those days?
Yeah, so if we think back to maybe the 70s, and maybe a young 13-year-old will be able to see a naked woman in Playboy or Penthouse, and there's nothing really wrong with that. That's fine. And let's say he wanted to become aroused. Well, all he could do was use his imagination. In fact, that was enough arousal for a 13, 14-year-old boy. But now in 2018, and actually starting in 2006, the invention of what they call porn tube sites occurred,
Okay.
which were based on YouTube. And now there were thousands, millions, perhaps billions now videos of so-called real people having real
That's right.
sex.
That's right. And let's hold that thought real quickly. And we're going to continue our conversation with Gary Wilson when we return worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. We're also going to be giving away a book called Your Brain on Porn. And we'll be right here waiting for you. Okay, Gary, I apologize for that. I thought we had a minute left, but we obviously I cut it really too close. And so, yes, that is amazing how sometimes we find our calling, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I guess it's my calling. I jumped into it. It's still rather strange for me, being from a very liberal background. In fact, my dad was a sex educator for a while.
Wow.
To be discussing the negative effects of porn, but there certainly are negative effects. And, you know, we've seen one thing that's important is we've seen a tremendous rise in erectile dysfunction in young men. You know, it used to be study after study up until about 2008 showed that erectile dysfunction in men under 40 was about 2 to 3% consistently. Then in about 9 studies since then, it's ranged from 14 to 37%.
Wow. I'd
So
love for you to repeat those statistics as well,
I will.
because, you know, people need to know, okay, I'm going to give you I don't like pornography. I don't have it in my home. I don't embrace it. I don't think it belongs anywhere. It's not real. So that's my biased opinion. I want to present a case today for people who think this is a casual thing and are finding themselves hooked. You call it the tube pornography, or is it pornography tube?
Tube sites.
Tube sites. Okay. But that is so
Based on
easy.
YouTube.
Based on, oh, was it YouTube?
Yes.
I remember when pornography started hitting the internet, and I remember my ex-husband at the time, just wanted to show me something amazing. And I remember it just was like pixelating, and like it just took forever to see the actual body of the person. And by the time I realized what he was showing me, I was just like, what the heck are you doing? And that became more important to him than our own relationship. And so I think that there's a deep down kind of like, I want to help others see not only the side of a man, because I'm sure that there are women that are addicted to porn as well. I'm not sure. I have not read the statistics on
Yes,
that's why I have you. But what it causes, the damage that it causes in intimacy, relationships, what could go wrong. So it looks like we're ready to start. So with that in mind, let's start with the statistics. I'm going to, I didn't say how, I think I'll do the 7th caller or texter, because I don't know how many people will actually call for this book. I'm curious. And because people are ashamed of this. This is like something we don't talk about. So I hope that people will be brave and want to end the cycle and want to get this book, because I think it's a great book. Okay, so 7th caller or texter. Okay, we're ready to get started. Here we go. Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where we always learn and grow together. Today's topic may not be something you want your children to listen to. This is a friendly show for everybody to hear. This is a conversation that we will have that is honest, with integrity, and be able to identify the problem with internet pornography or pornography altogether. And so today we have, our teacher is Gary Wilson. He wrote the book called Your Brain on Porn. And we're giving away a copy. Be the 7th caller or texter. And I want you to be brave. If you have an addiction to porn and you want this book, I want you to be brave. And even if it's not for you and you want to give it to somebody, call 407-373-5959. Now, Gary, off the air, we're talking a little bit about my expectation for this show. And I would love for you to share statistics and why this is such an important issue to talk about and admit that there is potential problems with this issue.
If you think about this millennial generation, they grew up using internet porn. The males did. In fact, the recent study from Australia found that 100% of males use porn from ages 16 to 30. Now, what's interesting is if
100%. I'm shocked.
Why would a young man give up porn? Well, the reason for many of them are sexual problems such as erectile dysfunction or just simply not getting excited by their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it is. Now, if we look back historically at erectile dysfunction rates for men under 40, they were consistently between 2 to 3%. And that would make sense up until about 2008. Mm-hmm. And things started to change. So about 9 studies since 2008, 2009 have found that erectile dysfunction rates for men under 40 are between 14 and 37%. And one study followed, now listen to this, young men 16 to 21 over 2 years, and it found that nearly 80% of them had sexual problems. 43% of them had reported erectile dysfunction during that time, and about 40% had low libido. Can you imagine a 20-year-old with low libido? Now, what variable has changed in that time? And that's the invention of what they call porn tube sites, where you can instantly stream hardcore videos of every type and genre imaginable. And that changed in 2006. Before that, you'd have to take 2, 3, 4 minutes just to download a single picture. That was the game changer. And that's when we saw this tremendous rise in sexual problems among young people.
Okay, so is there a difference? Because before I lost track of time there, I asked you a question that deserved a little bit more of an explanation. I said the difference between video, magazines, maybe couples watch a video. Are there any difference, or is addiction to pornography all the way across the board the same level?
Well, I don't even think of this as addiction. That's sort of a binary view. This is about changing the brain. And we're talking about changing the brain. The main thing that goes on when watching porn is sexual conditioning, conditioning your arousal template to everything associated with your porn use. And what is it in 2018 is you are watching someone else have sex. So for a 13, 14-year-old boy who's watching that, his entire imagination is being shaped by porn. In the old days, he had a Playboy picture, and all he could do was look at a woman.
Sure.
Now he's watching other people have sex, or not really sex, if you want to call it. It's really hardcore and it's awful misogynistic. Yeah. And it shapes his brain in 2 ways. The first way is, oh, this is how people have sex, and this is how I should do it. You know.
And it's not a good example.
No, and the other type of shaping is deeper, and is that I need this level of stimulation to be aroused. And that's watching other people have sex, become a voyeur, needing to click from video to video to keep my arousal up. Maybe eventually it's a certain fetish. So once he gets with a real woman, he can't click a mouse to a new woman. He can't watch that woman. In other words, his experienced sexuality, even kissing a woman, doesn't match what he's been training for. So he's been training for the wrong sport. He's been watching porn for 5 years before he even kisses a girl. It doesn't match that, and he doesn't become aroused.
Okay, so with that in mind, you're giving some statistics of young men, and we're talking about men right now, but I do want to explore the other side, that women can also be addicted as well. But right now, with the statistic that you shared with the men, you're talking about sexual problems when they're addicted to internet pornography, and also erectile dysfunction at the prime, at their peak. You would think that,
but not necessarily addicted. Many guys, young guys, are not addicted. They can quit easily, yet their sexuality has been shaped. I really want to emphasize.
Okay. Thank you so much. I hear you now. I
Yeah.
hear you now. Okay. I didn't quite grasp that before, because I'm thinking, okay, it's the addiction, but even just being exposed to it is a problem. Thank you so much for that clarification. So with that in mind, one would think that, oh, this pornography is going to arouse me, but what it does is it changes the mapping in the brain. So let's talk about that and what it does to the brain. What causes this instant? It's almost like someone doing crack or heroin, that it's like, okay, how does that work compared to this watching pornography on the internet?
Well, there's several levels to this. So how we can see what porn does to the brain is by observing the behaviors, observing the results. So we talked about sexual dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about addiction, all addictive drugs and all addictive behaviors have one thing in common. They activate the reward system.
Mm-hmm.
They increase what's called dopamine. And dopamine is something that motivates you to go after it. Well, that's what they all have in common. What occurs with sexual arousal, it's by far the highest level of dopamine available to us naturally. And what's interesting is the level of dopamine that activates the reward system is equal to morphine or OxyContin or nicotine.
Wow.
So it's very powerful. But what's different from watching internet porn than taking OxyContin or morphine is that OxyContin can't shape your innate sexual circuits. So you have many parts of the brain that are devoted to reproduction, sexual arousal, and orgasm. And these will be shaped by your sexual experiences. And if your sexual experience is sitting, watching, clicking from video to video, watching hardcore videos, watching incest video, watching rape videos, that's shaping those innate circuits.
Yes.
Drugs cannot do that. So that's what makes internet porn a unique stimulus. And as you get more and more dopamine is about learning. So it's telling the addict of oxycodone, oh, this is very important to your survival. Let's go to the drugstore. Let's get some more. But the porn user is saying, this is very important to your survival. And it's creating, as you said, new maps, new sexual maps for arousal. And as we mentioned before, those arousal maps come in two ways. This is how I should do sex, or watching other people have sex is what turns me on now, not actually engaging in sex.
You know, there's so many things I want to say at this point, but I'm gonna say, for those of you who are listening to the Lillian McDermott radio show and feel uncomfortable with children, you can always watch this on YouTube. You can watch it on whenyounneedafriend.com later on. So, but these are conversations that we need to have with our children. We need to let them know that this exposure can affect them and it can harm. Now, earlier, Gary, you talked about, and we're talking about the book, Your Brain on Porn, and I want to ask you, and I want to beg you that if you are a porn, whether it's casual or addicted to internet pornography, that, or you know somebody, that you be brave and be the 7th caller or texter, 407-373-5959. I want us to, there's the book there for those of you who are watching on YouTube. There's the book, Your Brain on Porn. And I want for all of us to be real with this, because we're not just talking about addictions only. It's changing. This is for people also that are even casual users. Now, this is exposing people to just so many different things that we would never even think about. So you gave the statistic earlier that 100% of all men, 100% of men from the ages of 16 to 30 watch pornography. Now, what about women? What statistics do you have for women?
Well, it's increased quite a bit. I think from that same study, it was between 40 and 50% had viewed it in the last month or two. Women obviously view it a lot less. Now, if we looked at a few studies, and of course, it's really difficult to study pornography, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, some of the studies have come out in terms of addiction, looking at college age males and females. The males, it ranged from 19-20% were addicted, amazingly. And for the females, it could have been 4 to 5%.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to get good stats on regular use. People often don't tell the truth in studies, and
Mm-hmm.
actually, pornography use studies are not keeping up with reality. Many of them are from 2004, 2003, but it definitely is increasing, and more women are showing up on porn recovery forums describing some of the same problems that the men have. So a man, when he's not aroused, he has a barometer. The barometer is, I can't get an erection.
Mm-hmm.
I should be excited. For the women, often they never see it and they blame it on their partner. You're not getting me excited. But in fact, they've been conditioning their arousal to watching porn. So it's it's quite a bit harder for the women to recognize the problems.
Okay, so here's the thing. You kind of mentioned voyeurism and needing to click and click to have. There's multiple tabs. It's so accessible to. They're going into bestiality. They're going into so many different choices that are out there that we would never have even thought about. But what are the things that we are missing out on? Because you're usually alone, or you're not with the person. If you're watching with another person, you're really the intention is to that whatever that becomes, that you're whatever you're looking at. Let's talk about what a person misses out on when they are either casually or more than casually have that video or whatever that they're watching. They're missing
Well,
out
they're
on.
missing out on connection with another person, and this can be
Thank you. That's what
seen
I was doing.
by guys giving it up. So young men is mostly what I see. They give it up, and then they start to perceive women differently. Instead of being objects, they start to get little flutters. They said, I've never had a flutter. I've never been excited by looking at the woman's eyes, looking at her face, seeing her smile. So this is someone who's 23 who never had that feeling because they started using porn at age 12. And they're going, oh my God, I've never had this feeling. So they're missing out on what we usually feel as an adolescent, that flutter, that excitement of another person.
Absolutely. And so I want to encourage you, my listening and my viewing friends, to be the seventh caller or texter. Be brave, because this is not just a casual thing. This is affecting your brain. 407-373-5959 and your relationships. It's affecting your relationship. It's affecting how you feel about yourself as well. So please be brave. 407-373-5959. And we're going to continue our conversation with Gary Wilson, author of the book, Your Brain on Porn, when we return worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. This is, it's like as I'm doing this show with you, Gary, and as I was preparing for the show, there was a lot that I just could not allow to, for lack of a better word, penetrate in my spirit. In my spirit. And I know I'm going to get little silly comments up, but I guess I had to say that. That's the word that comes to me, that I just had to do this research and not let it go within my spirit. I feel that pornography, I don't care what level it is in, whether it's a Playboy or whether it's a video or internet, hurts our spirit. It causes, and I know you're not a religious guy, but I don't know if you're a spiritual person, but our spirit is connected to who we are. Have there been any studies about how the spirit gets assaulted by when we look at something that is so vile, that could hurt?
Well, no, not so much spirit, but attitudes. And study after study finds that more porn use, or even porn use just using porn is strongly correlated with attitudes. So looking at men, it's sexist attitudes. It's having women be less than. It's seeing them as objects. So over and over that occurs. And what's interesting is every single study ever done on men has shown that more porn use is related to less sexual and relationship satisfaction. That's 60 studies. So that's pretty important. What's more important than our intimate relationships? Probably nothing. And so it's affecting those in every study ever published.
Now, before we go back on the air, I want to ask you, prior to you really researching this, what was your opinion about pornography?
I had no opinion at all. I'm a super liberal. I didn't care. I still don't care really what people do. I had just no opinion at all, and I was sort of shocked. But looking at it from a brain perspective, a neurobiological perspective, it's clear how internet pornography can shape the user in multiple ways.
Okay. So now, as we're going into the second half of the show, this is a show about hope and healing and wellness. And I do want to talk about recovery. So when we go back, of course, I'm going to talk about how to get a hold of me, how to get a hold of you, and then reintroduce you. Is that good?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, here we go. We're ready to get started. Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where we always learn and grow together. You can hear us worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. It is my goal as the host of the show. My name is Lillian McDermott. If you're just tuning in, it is my goal that we learn from each other, to go through life with childlike wonder. The person in front of you knows something you don't know. And I want to encourage you to be curious about what they know as opposed to critical. And so where we have these kind of conversations, and I want you to help me grow the show, tell your friends, to your family, the people that you love or maybe not love, go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Please become a subscriber. When you become a subscriber, you get all free gifts. You get the 90-day challenge to self-love ebook, as well as the show gets sent to you. The podcast, the audio podcast gets sent to you to your phone or tablet, to your email, basically. And but while you're at whenyouneedafriend.com, I would like for you not only to subscribe, but to click onto all my little social media buttons. So follow me and like me on all my social media, but also because we have these conversations off the air. The show today is not on Facebook Live. I wish I could have this show on Facebook Live. Maybe in the future, we're going to get Gary back to do this show on Facebook Live as well, because it is something that we have got to either stumble upon, become aware of. And so go to YouTube, where we have the on and off the air conversations. Subscribe there too. And when you subscribe, if you set it for notifications, anytime there's a show, you'll have access to the show as well. Very powerful information that we discuss: mind, body, spirit, how to take ownership of your life. While you're at whenyouneedafriend.com, I ask that you click onto my sponsors button, and while you're there, check out my sponsors, because without my sponsors, there would be no show. So figure out ways that you can support my sponsors the way they are supporting me. And so with that in mind, check them out. Behind me, you'll see my sponsors as well when you check out my YouTube channel. Liberty Health Share is one of my largest, and I'm so proud of that. And so I would like for you to check out my podcast and be the 7th caller or texter. Every time I say this, I ask Gary to hold his book up so that you all could see it. 7th caller or texter, and you will win the book, Your Brain on Porn, 407-373-5959. As you all know, and I want you to be brave. Please be brave. So whether it's not you, it's somebody else, or maybe you just want to learn about what happens to the brain when it goes onto this internet porn sites, at least you will be informed choices. So my show, Gary, and thank you so much for being on today. My show is all about hope and natural healing and healing mind, body, spirit, as I had mentioned to you. So we talked about what pornography does, and we can beat that dead horse as long as we could talk about an hour of statistics and why this is harmful for the body, the mind, and the spirit. But let's talk about recovery. What can people do that are addicted or that are casual users and want to stop the framing of this as this is real, and it's keeping them from the relationships that they could have?
Well, what's interesting, and this may seem strange, the first thing that most men 30 and under need to reframe is that porn is separate from masturbation. And I know this sounds strange, but they've grown up in an era where they are the same. The top landing place on my website, which gets about 3,000, this one question gets 3,000 hits per week, is how do I masturbate without porn? So they need to separate these two entities. That's very important. And so when the first advice I'd give is just simply try to give up porn. And if you have trouble giving it up, then that shows that you had a problem. If you also start to experience withdrawal symptoms, such as anxiety, irritability, mood swings, and what's interesting is something called the flat line, which is unique to internet porn use. And the flat line is where the person stops using and they see a tremendous drop in their libido, and they objectively see people as maybe good looking, but they have no arousal. This is reported over and over again. So this tells you that porn use has shaped the brain, because no 18-year-old should be a complete loss of libido. So when you give up and you start noticing some changes, that tells you it's changed your brain, and that should be motivation to give it up. And try 90 days. Try 90 days of no porn and see how you feel on multiple levels of your life without it. You know, one of the number one benefits that guys are surprised by is that they feel more emotions. They have more joy, but they also have greater sadness. And so the use of internet porn has been numbing their emotions. They have more motivation. Wow. And so there's many benefits that they'll experience, but they need to give it time. They need to give it a few months in order to experience these benefits.
Interesting. And so, of course, while they're doing that, they can go to whenyounneedafriend.com and check out my 90-day challenge to self-love ebook. But all you need is to sign up and register on my website as a subscriber, and you'll get that free copy of my ebook, 90-day challenge to self-love. So we can do this together.
Your Brain on Porn, it has lots of resources. They can go there. You know, my book, it's given to charity, the proceeds. I don't make any money off of this.
That's nice.
And so you can go there and you can see tons of resources, other websites, huge forums where people are giving up forums. So there's all sorts of help out there. There's a support page right there on my site, yourbrainonporn.com. And so that's what I would suggest, is visit the site and go to many other forums and many other free resources.
Yes. So yourbrainonporn.com is the place where you can go to get the resources as well. So, okay. So we've heard in the past that once your brain is formatted or plugged or a certain way, it can never change. But we've learned that that's not real, that we can retrain the brain, we can reformat, and we can just change our perspective and just do different things like that. So what are some of, other than the 90-day tip that you gave, which is absolutely wonderful, and some of the self-evaluation of how am I feeling right now? What are some other tips that people can have to heal their mind and their spirit?
Well, often people who are truly addicted need some support. So these forums, they can go to the support and they'll often get a buddy. They'll write posts. So that's very helpful. But of course, there's other things that they've found very beneficial. Number one is exercise. You need to get out and exercise. Both lifting weights and aerobic exercise has been proven both in animal and human studies to help overcome addiction, to actually change the brain. It increases certain neurohormones that affect the brain directly. The other one is meditation. Meditation, even 10 minutes a day, actually starts to, as you say, neuroplasticity, change the brain. And what it does is it increases the strength of the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain behind the forehead. And that's part of the brain that where our willpower sits. And so it can actually strengthen willpower. They've seen brain changes occur within 4 to 6 weeks. And when someone has an addiction, this part of the brain is changed significantly, so it has trouble inhibiting the unwanted behavior. So meditation, exercise, socializing, even getting out and joining a club. For young men, maybe they can go take dance lessons. So it's something that's structured, and yet they're interacting with a female in a normal, non-sexual way. These are ways that you can really help your recovery.
You know, it's interesting that you're talking about replacing an addiction with something good, like exercise, meditation. But what happens is when people give up smoking, they replace their addiction with eating, and now they have a new addiction. Have they done studies if people don't start doing, which you're talking about how the internet porn releases that dopamine, and with exercise that also happens, that release of dopamine. Have they done studies where they've been able to look at when someone decides to not replace it with something good, that what would be the next step? Living it? What is the next step for like becoming part of porn? I don't know if I'm asking the question right.
I'm not quite understanding the question.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that when somebody replaces a bad habit with a good habit, you have something good. What then have they done studies with what is replaced when they don't replace pornography addiction or pornography with something like exercise? What do they replace it if they replace it with something bad? Have they done studies like that? Is what I don't.
So are you? Yes, some people do replace it with something bad. They may play a lot of video games. They may eat more, and so people describe that, and it's true. People will often switch addictions. So, that's part of where you have to have a positive addiction. So what you're looking for is reward. You're looking for dopamine. You're looking for endorphins. This is what you're set up. Moment to moment, you're looking for rewards. That's how the brain works. So you have to replace it with natural rewards.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So we're going to continue our conversation, be the 7th caller or texter, 407-373-5959, and win a free copy of Your Brain on Porn. And we're going to continue our conversation with Gary Wilson when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. Be brave, and call 407-373-5959, and we'll continue our conversation. We'll be right here waiting for you. Okay. So we're getting to the last segment of the show, and I think that this is going to be the last segment, right? Yes, we're going into the 4th segment. Oh my God, my brain is on like overload here. So with that in mind, what I was trying to say is, and I think I finally asked the question right, is that what happens to a person who is refusing to substitute the perhaps maybe addiction of pornography? Do they then kind of like, to spice it up with their spouse, try to become a porn star? Try to, do they try to live the life of a porn star themselves if they don't replace it with things that are, like exercise and meditation? I don't know if I'm asking the question well.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways this could go. So almost universally, when and it's usually men, give up porn, they do not replace it with trying to act it out with their partner, because the stimulation of porn is so much beyond their partner, because they can click through basically 100 videos, and that of course couldn't match their partner. They actually feel a drop in libido. However, there is a small percentage that then switch to often visiting prostitutes. So we
Ooh.
see
So there is
that.
an escalation. I think that's the question I'm asking. Is there an escalation when porn is not enough?
Yeah, so there is an escalation, and I see it as probably about 5% to 10% at the most, probably less than that. But there is an escalation. So some percentage will describe how they used porn, then they escalated into some very strange fetishes, and they wanted to act those out. So they started visiting prostitutes, and then they became addicted to visiting prostitutes. So that then becomes, of course, a huge problem, obviously.
So that is okay. So I want to address that when we go on the air, because we've got to be clear in our intention that if somebody is trying to get off pornography, internet pornography, and I like, when you talk about, and by the way, I have no idea if they're going to if they're going to go on the show on the air, if they're going to say, okay, he talked about masturbation, he talked about all these things. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to go under the radar here, and the show will be able to air on the air, but it's going on YouTube no matter what, and we'll put it on Facebook. But the escalation, that is the question that I am trying to ask. Like when you are a smoker and you replace it with another bad habit, which would be, eating horrible foods, and all of a sudden people go, oh, don't give up smoking because you'll gain weight. No. If you give up smoking and you replace it with exercise or breathing clean air, there's no weight gain that's going to happen at that moment, right?
Well, there could be, because actually nicotine does change the brain, and it changes the reward system in such a way that it inhibits hunger. So, that's one of the reasons why those who give up smoking gain weight, and it may actually change metabolism. But that's another story.
That's another show. Okay.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, this is our fourth segment. And I do want to talk about that escalation, and I do want to talk about
That's
healing.
very important.
Healing,
Escalation is very important.
healing relationships. Because if you are in a relationship with maybe a partner who is lying about pornography and lying about what they're doing, how does that affect the spouse, and how can that relationship heal after that exposure to that porn? Okay, so let's make this last one count, and here we go. Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where we always learn and grow together. Today's teacher is Gary Wilson. Gary Wilson is the author of Your Brain on Porn. And I would like to encourage you to be brave, be the seventh caller or texter. Give this book to someone you love. Give this book to yourself, but you owe it to yourself to develop relationships that are real. You cannot compete with porn. I can never compete with porn, nor do I want to compete with porn. And I am hoping that I am not giving my bias away. I always talk about healthy living and eating, and I also talk about healthy relationships. And I believe, this is my personal opinion, that when there is a healthy relationship and you bring that pornography aspect to it, all of a sudden it changes. Anytime you bring another person into a relationship, it changes. So let's go from there. So Gary and I were talking off the air, and we finally figured out the real root of my question. So I want to know, when somebody is maybe drinking or doing, smoking, that might lead to something more, which it's a gateway. So the gateway to maybe sugar would be, maybe crack or heroin or anything to that effect. There's an escalation. And so I wanted to find out, what is the escalation of internet porn if you don't replace it with something healthy like exercise, meditation, and balancing and grounding yourself? So go ahead, Gary.
Well, first of all, there's escalation within porn, which is by far the most common. In fact, a study found that over 50% of men who just used porn once or twice a month eventually escalated. And so what that means is they start off with just regular porn, and they'll escalate into very hard genres. So an alcoholic, they escalate by drinking more. A porn user escalates by going into more and more extreme material, because more extreme material causes shock or anxiety, and it ups the dopamine, and the dopamine increases the arousal. So the number one type of genre that is increasing over the last few years is incest porn. So that is number one in terms of increasing.
That is so wrong in so many different levels.
I know, it's so wrong in so many different levels. So rape porn is also increasing tremendously. So often the guys describe increasing into these strange genres. Occasionally, and it's really hard to tell because there's really no studies on this, some of the individuals, the men, will actually escalate in needing to act out the porn scenarios with real people. So they will then visit prostitutes and try to act it out with them, because they're certainly not going to be able to act out some of this very violent and hardcore interactions, I'll just use that term, with their partner or real people. So that can occur. What also can occur, which we talked about, is that men will stop using porn, and then they will replace it with visiting prostitutes in order to get their jollies. And that's obviously a very dangerous and costly replacement.
Yes. And so then again, going back to the healing. So when you have one partner that is hiding the truth that they are watching this, and now the other partner believes that they are not loved or not sexy enough or not beautiful enough to get their attention, how does a couple come together? How do you suggest that a person tell, because I don't want to just say, I could say men and stereotype it, but women as well, not as much. But how do you break the cycle, end the cycle, and say to your spouse, this is my problem and I need your help? How do you bring back that relationship so that the relationship becomes the number one goal for the couple?
Well, that may involve therapy if it's really been damaging to the spouse or the girlfriend. It may not. Some women go, oh, I understand. So it's almost generational, because many of the younger women, 30 and other, go, oh, well, that's normal. I'll help you with that. Yet it might be someone who's of the older generation, 40 and older, and the female will feel really traumatized, and they may need to seek therapy to deal with that. And it's not an easy road if the man's addicted. He will more than likely relapse, and he will often then hide the relapse because he doesn't want to hurt his wife. So there's often a cycle, like there would be with other addictions, of relapse and then getting back on the wagon, and relapse and getting back on the wagon. So it's not going to be an easy road for a man who's truly addicted. But often what they report on the forums, the man will say, you know, I told my wife, and yeah, it was hard, but right now, and we're talking about 6 months later, it was the best decision I made. So yeah, initially it's going to be tough. Yes, the woman may need therapy, and yet it can be a very powerful step to take.
Very good. Okay. So with that in mind, I want to add to or ask a question on what you just said. Relapse. There are relapse. With good intentions, there are relapse. Are there triggers that cause relapse? Have you done any studies on that?
Well, the triggers are everywhere. You just turn on the computer. Turning on the computer is a trigger. So trigger means something that gets the dopamine going and then starts severe cravings. So an alcoholic can be walking down the street and he goes by a bar and he smells beer, and all of a sudden he has these cravings, even though he hasn't taken a drink in 3 years, to have a drink. The same thing occurs with the guy. And there's triggers everywhere on the internet. Pop-ups, or you just go to the Daily Mail and you're reading an article, and in the sidebar you got all these women in bikinis. So that makes it actually much more challenging to get over porn, because the triggers are everywhere. The trigger could be in a movie you're watching. The trigger could be in a TV show you're watching. So it can be quite challenging. So that's why it takes time, and it takes certain activities like meditation to strengthen the frontal cortex so that you can inhibit those behaviors and let them pass, let the cravings pass. So yes, there's going to be triggers, there's no way to avoid them, and ultimately you're going to have to strengthen the part of the brain that is controlling your willpower.
And that strengthening the brain that controls the willpower, or that controls the stick-to-itiveness to stay away from that. You're talking about exercise, meditation. Are there any other any other ways to help the craving pass, Gary?
Well, often they have to get away. So the guys will say, I shut down my computer, I do 20 push-ups, or I go outside and take a walk. So in the initial stages, you often have to have a plan. If I'm triggered and I'm going into that zone where it's just going to take me over, I need to have a plan, and I need to follow the plan. And often it's turning the computer off and getting away from it. Some guys will even completely change their room where they use their computer. They will rearrange the furniture. Others will get porn blockers. So porn blockers, they can get past them, but it gives you time because it's hard to get past them. Some people will get certain software that actually sends a message to someone when you've gone to a porn site.
Oh, yeah?
So there's different type of technology you can use to assist yourself.
So what is that? What is the name of that site that you can get where it sends it to someone?
Well, there's many types. Again, you can go to my site, YBOP, and you can find some of these types of software that will send a message to your buddy. So there's different types of software, and there's many types of free software that block porn sites or block images. So that would be something to do in the initial stages.
And a warning to people who think, okay, I'm cured, I'm done, I'm never going to go on internet porn again, I repent, I whatever. Word of advice for those people.
The word of advice is you're probably going to relapse. And if you do relapse, then what you want to do is not binge, because the all or nothing part of your brain, the addictive part of your brain says, oh my God, I just, watch 30 minutes of porn. I might as well watch 5 hours of porn, and I might as well watch it tomorrow. And so you don't want to get into that all or nothing thinking. Really avoid that.
Very
You've watched
good.
a half hour, you're done.
Very good. And Gary, there's so much to talk about this. I hope that the message is clear, that there is help for people. And seventh caller, texter 407-373-5959 gets the copy, Your Brain on Porn. Thank you so much, Gary, for being a part of the show today. I hope that you helped a lot of people. And to you, my listening friends and my viewers, please remember, I'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good job. It's a tough topic. It really is, because the brain, we ignore a lot of things. And it's interesting, we talk about on the show how when people experience trauma, and I guess I didn't go there on the show, but maybe you can address people that are addicted to porn, or maybe get started looking at porn. Is it accidental, or could there be a deeper cause, a root cause that it goes beyond maybe molestation, or maybe there's another aspect of their life, maybe they were abandoned, whatever. Have they been able to go deeper why some people are like turned on with porn and some people are turned off by porn?
So the old model of sex addiction that was really started in the 80s, and that was through Patrick Carnes, and his model is that people who became addicted to sex, and often most of these were people acting out serial affairs or going to prostitutes long before internet porn existed, that they always had issues, and usually childhood trauma, like you said, abandonment, molestation, maybe pre-existing conditions such as severe depression, ADHD. And the therapists that treated under this model really held tight to it, even as the internet became alive and even as nearly 100% of young men used porn. And several of us others came along and said, people who are addicted to porn or are being negatively affected by porn, they may not have childhood issues. May have been a 10-year-old, like any 10-year-old would be, curious.
Yes.
And where are you going to learn? You go and you start searching. And what you do, you start masturbating to porn. It's normal, and now it's normalized. So there's been finally the acknowledgement that, yes, there are people who need therapy, they have deeper issues, and often they'll escalate outside of porn. But yet there's a huge and growing population of individuals with no pre-existing conditions or trauma who became addicted or affected without addiction just because they grew up using internet porn. And so that is by far the largest population. And recent studies in the last 2 years have actually flipped it over and found out, my goodness, these addicts, 90%, close to 90% are just porn users, and the ones that act out with real people are a small percentage now. So it's really flipped. And that's just because of the internet.
So the takeaway from this show, and I appreciate you saying it several times so that I could hear you, is that you don't have to be addicted to pornography for it to affect your brain mapping.
Yes, and affect your sexuality.
And affect not only sexuality, but it caused erectile dysfunction, low libido. I mean, I would have never thought of that. I would think that they're using it to get aroused.
So here's the thing, is what really scared us as we got into it. The first guys that showed up on my wife's forum were in their 30s. And since this was 10 years ago, they're now in their 40s. And they didn't start on internet porn. They started on other porn. And when they finally found out through experimentation that porn use had caused their erectile dysfunction and they quit using porn, they would usually heal their erectile dysfunction and be back functioning really good within 2 months.
Wow.
Then as time went on, 2012, 2013, young men started showing up, and it took them longer to heal than the old men. So the men in their 50s would heal in 2 months. Now we're seeing young men in their 20s who's been using porn since age 11, taking up to a year, 2 years to get their sexual functioning back, and it's not fully back. So that's what's scary, and that's what shows you how the adolescent brain is unique. The adolescent brain is reshaping itself. It's getting rid of billions and billions of nerve connections during that period in order to shape itself and learn. And so what it does during those adolescent years, stick with it. Those are our most powerful memories, our most powerful experiences. And the purpose of the adolescent brain, number one, is to learn how to engage sexually and to reproduce. So that's what's going on. The adolescent brain is being shaped by internet pornography. And now the young men are needing longer, not only to recover, but they need to retrain their brains. We call it rewiring, to get excited to a real partner. The older men did not need to do that. So that shows you the power of what can occur during adolescence.
Wow, you just gave me chills. I tell you what, I'd love to continue this conversation. I would love to do this on Facebook Live one day, because what we think is really is not. What we think is real is really not real. What we think is harmless is really very harmful. And so people need to become aware that this is affecting their health as well. It's not just, oh, Lillian McDermott is an old prude. It's not about that. It's about health and wellness. And I'm glad that your studies and research have been able to shed that light. Are there any websites that are helping people heal? You called it porn recovery sites that you feel maybe you would like to mention before we go?
Yeah, some of the most popular porn recovery sites are Your Brain Rebalanced, Reboot Nation, nofap.com, Reddit Porn Free, Reddit NoFap. Those are huge sites, some of them with 300, 400,000 members.
Wow.
So very active, extremely active, and they can get a lot of support there.
Very good. I think you've done a lot of good today, Gary, not only with your book, but with your mission. It's amazing how when we're not looking, when we least expect it, we find our calling. And I'm glad that you were open to do something different and create something new for yourself. And thank you for giving the book away to not only my listeners, but you said that you give the profits to charitable
Sure.
organizations to make something good out of something that's not so good. And for
Yep.
any men or any women who think that pornography is harmless, it is such a huge lie, because the people that you're looking at are not real. They're acting, and many of them are not healthy themselves, and they're acting upon, and it's an industry that uses people. And so I just want to change the perspective and hopefully help people start on the road without judgment. Without judgment. How am I doing this without judgment? I hope you feel loved by this, and just the awareness that something's got to change. And if you are dabbling in pornography here and there, just know, listen to your body. It's speaking to you by, like what Gary said, through erectile dysfunction, through low libido, you would have never, ever thought of that, Gary. So thank you so much for your wisdom today.
Thank you.
And to you for watching today, thank you. I hope that if you like this video, give us the thumbs up and share it with your friends. Help me grow the show. And again, until our next conversation. Thank you, Gary.